Coastal Carolina takes the ball, marches to the goal, and kicks it on through. Proud to be a shot through and through. We'll shout our colors, go Teal, go Teal! And then we'll yell out and runs, and our beloved Chanticleers will win this game. Soccer, bustle, that's our custom, Coastal Carolina.
All right, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that is the quarterback. The Chanticleers lose the face of the team, Grayson McCall. He transfers over to NC State. I'm assuming he pees red now. That might be a problem that he needs to go see the medical doctor for.
Yes, he might need a shot for that if that's true.
However, last year we got to see our fair share of Ethan Vasco due to injuries that the aforementioned Grayson McCall suffered. We saw Vasco in 8 games, and he counted for over 1,000 yards rushing and throwing. They bring in Noah Kim from Michigan State, and then more recently, after the spring, they bring in Tad Hudson over from North Carolina. How did the quarterback battle shape up in the spring?
So it was never a battle, first off. Well, let's go backwards even a little bit. I don't know if the average person knows this or not, but I do feel obligated because of family, friends reasons with Grayson. He had to transfer. His 2 choices were transfer and make a lot of NIL money, or put your name in the lottery and try the NFL waters. And then that's just the stupid, NCAA rules of you're allowed to play, but you just can't play here. And so he had to make a tough choice. And the entire Conway, Coastal Carolina community is fully behind Grayson McCall. He still has a tattoo of a Chanticleer on his leg. He might have to wear a sleeve now over his leg, but he's there. No, to answer your question, the spring, as far as the one goes, it was not a competition. Ethan Vasco is going to be the man, at least for this year. What happens beyond that is beyond that. Let me give you this. So this is what, if I had one surprise, this is the one surprise that I had at the end of the spring practices. Blake Boda, who I thought would be the 2, was named the 3. And this just shows you, I think, of the quality of the quarterback position. I don't think he was too satisfied with being the 3, so he entered the portal, ended up in SEC country at Arkansas. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be at the 1 or maybe even not even at the 2, but the fact that they accepted him from a G5 school to play in SEC and be probably a backup at Arkansas, that says something if he was officially our 3. And so that just tells you about the quality of the 2 and the 1 ahead of him. And Blake Boda got into a couple of games, made some huge key plays on some critical games, converted a real long 3rd and long on one particular game that we needed that drive to score and win. So, and he had a local fan base here that really, and so we wish Blake well. We're not going to talk. There's nothing negative about Blake. He made his decisions, and you've got to, at the end of the day, look for number 1, even though it was a hurt to Coastal to lose him. So then, yeah, they picked up the kid from North Carolina afterwards. And my gut feeling is throughout the fall practice, whatever you want to call August, summer practice, those 2, Kim from Michigan State and him, will start really duking it out and see who can outperform each other for a solid 2. But it's Ethan Vasco's job. You only got to see what a 3rd-string quarterback could do when he came in because he was thrown in with injuries to Grayson and Jarrett. And he was just forced into the Old Dominion game. And then by the time he had a little bit of prep, he was able to play for the full bowl game at in the Hawaii Bowl. But it's Ethan's job. He finally gets full reps as a full year starter as one. And I'm really curious and really interested to see how he's going to just embrace what he was thrusted into 2/3 of the way into the season.
Yeah, he's someone I'm super familiar with. He went to Oscar Smith High School.
Right. He was right there at Oscar Smith. Right.
Yeah, he went to Oscar Smith. He originally committed to Old Dominion, then
Kansas,
then flipped to Kansas, and
then
yeah, I mean, I think
later,
he brings a different element than I think either Kim or Hudson do. Kim and Hudson aren't nearly as mobile and as much of a dual threat as Vasco is. So he definitely brings that aspect that McCall also had to that offense, and that's just something else defenses have to prepare for. Makes it harder.
Well, and the way it's funny. Yes, he's got legs, and if you saw the bowl game, you saw him have that 175-yarder touchdown run, and he had another one against Old Dominion as well. So yes, he can run, but the way that Beck likes to set things up is use the pass to open up the run. Where a couple years ago with the spread triple option offense that Coach Chadwell ran, it was use the triple option, use the read and the spread, then to therefore open up the pass. So it's an opposite mindset, even though if you look at the run percentages, they end up about the same. So they're both run about 55, 56% of the time, but it's a different way of getting there. And yes, his legs do help him a lot.
Moving on to the running game, Coastal lost Reese White to graduation and CJ Beasley to Georgia State. They bring back their leading rusher from 2023 in Braden Bennett. They also return Max Baltazar and Javin Simpkins. How did that room shape up in the spring?
All right. I don't mean to be quick and short and coy on this one, and I'm not trying to be just whatever. Coastal's not running back you, but they are insert running back here. And that's how they've been since I've known them. It feels like it's always a constant rotation. Last year, I think it was the fourth string running back got the majority of the carries because of injuries. And just it's always been we go deep on running backs. We have multiple running backs that can carry the load and just run it. Braden Bennett, I think he's finally fully healthy. He's going to be one of the fastest, if not the fastest kid on the field. I don't care who you put him up against. So he should be one of the starting backs, but they're going to start two backs. And you're going to see a lot of primary carries. But on the average game, you're going to have about 5 or 6 people carry the ball, and that includes little swing runs with the receivers as well, and just little, inside handoffs and some reverses. It's not just a true, here's our number one running back, then our number two running back. It's a running back by committee system, which I think most of college football has evolved to.
So they brought in a transfer from New Mexico and Christian Washington, and then Mississippi State, who's not on campus yet, Simeon Price. Do you envision them being in that rotation right away, or are they
not initially? I really don't think so initially, just because you need to have the reps. You truly do. And there are positions where you can pick it up faster than others, but I see Bennett and Balthazar being the 1 and 2 to start off initially. Now, what happens in October go forward, so be it. But they're going to get their chances hopefully early. I don't know how much chances they're going to get on week 1 when we play at Jacksonville State, but I think they'll get some chances early in the season with William and Mary. And then just you take what's given to you, and a lot of it, and a lot of people just don't realize this. It's what you do on the practices that makes your playing time for the Saturdays or Thursdays.
And then, we talked about the quarterback rushing ability. In Tim Beck's first year as head coach and Travis Trickett's first year as the OC, we saw Ethan Vasco earn 39 less rushing yards than the leading rusher. So you talk about, everybody kind of getting a piece of the pie and the pass opening up the run. You got a mobile quarterback. What should we expect the exact same thing here for Ethan Vasco in 2024, or with that kind of a deep, I would say it's a pretty talented and deep quarterback room. Do you see him rushing more because you've got a capable backup, or not as much because you don't want to get him hurt?
I hope not. I hope his numbers are identical over the course of 12 games, even though he only played in whatever you said, 7, 8 with the bowl game. If he's running, it's hopefully by design, where it's like the read option, or if it's a scramble. But Coach Beck had McCall on a pitch count, and the average pitch count of when he was running the ball was 0 called runs per game. Now, there were some of them read options. I'm sure it's going to be the same way with Vesco. It's one of those things, I know I'm right, but I have no way to prove it until after the game is over. I'm sure he's going to want him to run a total of 0 times, but plays set themselves up, and that's why you do have such a thing as called a read. So he does want to limit contacts and limit hits because they are targets for whatever reason. These teams love licking their chops when they see a quarterback just hit that next level of the defense, and they just come in hot.
So the passing game loses its the big two, and Sam Pinckney to graduation, and Swiss Army knife Jared Brown to South Carolina. On top of that, they also lost Tyson Mobley over to Liberty. Now, those 3 guys accounted for 207 targets, almost 53% of the targets in that wide receiver room. They bring back Jamison Tucker and Kyrie Duplessis, among others. How did the wide receivers look in the spring?
So this is my question mark. All right, if you have to take a red ink pen to somewhere on every single team's roster, this will be my mark. Sam, Grandpa Sam, whatever you want, old man Sam, whatever you want to call him, he set the NCAA record for most consecutive games with a catch, the Art Monk record, if you will. Odds are he probably won't make it in the NFL because he's just a little bit older than they want rookie wide receivers. But he's everything you can ask for. And there's games where I feel like he was the only receiver that caught a pass. And then there was a couple of tight ends or, passes out to the running backs. So Sam was a huge loss. Jared Brown, I think everybody saw the writing on the wall his freshman year, the fact that he got a second year in. It was the worst kept rumors that we all knew he was listening to and trying to transfer portal out. So that was not a surprise. Good job. Hey, if South Carolina called and that's where you want to be, best of luck. But Jared also missed a game or two because of injuries and just undisclosed. And, they don't have to be disclosed. So he did miss for undisclosed injury reasons. So, yes, his speed is going to be a loss, and he was a difference maker. And you had a game plan on him, which opened up other things. But there is more to the thing. Now, to answer your question specifically, I'm actually most curious about a guy that just transferred in after spring practices, and I hope I say his name correctly, Malik Maja, the wide receiver transfer portal kid from Penn State. Yes, exactly. I'm curious where he's going to fit in. My gut feeling is give him a couple of games and then see if he builds his way into the rotation more by the middle half of the season. Just because some of these kids weren't on the roster, and I say the word kids because 22-year-old's still a kid. I'm sorry. When you're pushing 50, there's a lot of people that earn the word kid. So I apologize to anybody listening that I'm using the word kid to describe you. But no, Jamison Tucker's coming back. I mean, they still have some viable options. They just weren't the primary choices the previous year. So now it's just time to see if they step up and who does what. And that's going to be the interesting showcase is I know Vasco can get him the ball. It's just who's going to be coming down with it and where they, and you know, I'm going to throw these in there as well, but I'm afraid I might be stealing someone's thunder later. Put the tight ends in the same conversation. It's a tight end by committee, where I think the tight ends actually were probably the most improved from the beginning of the spring practices to the end of the spring practices. So you might have your starting one, but I got a feeling all three are going to see playing time pretty much every game this coming season, and it's going to be fun to watch and who gets the hot hand and start becoming a favorite target, because it's a wide open let's find out together type of scenario.
So you mentioned MIGA. They also brought in Seneca McKee from UNLV, and then Cameron Wright from East Mississippi Community College. Anything you can tell us about either of those two, and maybe they will have any kind of contribution here in 2024?
So I don't know much about the first guy, but the kid from the community college, there's quite a few of them that are in the watch this category. You've never heard of them. You don't know anything about them. And if you do, you're lying, unless you're a family member or they grew up next door to you. But the way that Coastal took the transfer portal is, for the most part, they look for kids stepping up. So as they're losing someone like a Jared Brown to South Carolina, most people would make the argument a G5 school is here and a step up is an SEC school. Well, Coastal took the same mindset. We're going to take the best players from the 1AA or the D3 level, whatever you want to call it, the FC levels or the D3 levels, and we're going to put them on our roster. And that's where some of these players, and I got some defensive names I'm really curious about as well, that are really interested to see how they're going to look come game day, how they play out. And so now you want to see them go live with real competition and not just controlled scrimmages and stuff like that. So it's going to be a good watch. I'm not going to say, besides, I feel like Tucker will be one of the three starting wide receivers. He's probably going to be a deep threat. Other than that, I'm not really sure who you could honestly say will be absolutely, he's going to be a one. He's going to be an every down receiver. I think it's a wide open battle, and unless you're in that offensive coaching staff room, your guess is as good as anybody else's.
We talked a little bit about Jared Brown and the kind of the role he played in this offense in the past. Is there anybody on the team that you think maybe is a 1-for-1 replacement, or it's going to be more of a, hey, this guy does this and this guy does that and this guy does that?
I think it's going to be more what you just described is, okay, on X scenario, it's going to be person A. Now, these incoming freshmen who got to graduate in December from high school and got the full spring practices, they very well could step up and earn a role as well. I mean, that wide receiver room is so deep. There's at least 10 on there, and they're going to have to establish the depth of the wide receivers, and they know who they are going to be the front runners. But when everybody else is getting equal looks and just it's going to be, like I said, I don't need to be coy, but I'm also not going to just say, oh yeah, mark this kid down as going to be a starter when nothing's been released. And Coastal Carolina kind of does that on purpose. Coach Beck, love him to death, great personality, but there's some things he will not do. And one, he's not going to give you wall art. He also wants to try to keep everything close-chested to be for gamesmanship purposes. And he just doesn't want to be put into gotcha situations. And he's afraid, not afraid, but he doesn't want someone to say, oh, well, you did this, so gotcha, now we can throw that against you. He's very self-conscious of how everything is done, and everything is done with a purpose. And so the fact that y'all were talking earlier how no depth chart is released and no initial, going into summer, what it's looking like, not the least bit surprised. In fact, that's 100% intentional.
And then you did mention Tucker, you feel comfortable with him being out there. Do you think he's going to be on the outside there, or if you were coaching, where would you put him?
So if I'm using Tucker, what I would use him is I would start him possibly in a slot position, but on the out. But yes, but he's going to be running a lot of go routes. What they would do is run him as start him in the slot receiver and then bring him out wide or just go post. And then you fake a run or something over the middle to a tight end, and then you got the guy streaking down on a little wheel route. I believe now y'all can back me up on this, and someone can look it up and whatever because I don't have the stats memorized. But I'm pretty sure he led the team in average yards per reception because he was the deep ball threat. They would just throw over his head and he would just run and catch. And he was getting something like 19.8 yards per reception this past season. So I do feel confident they're going to continue using him in that speedster role of just get him into open field and let open field make play.
All right, let's move over to the tight ends. Coastal returns its starting tight end from a year ago in Kendall Carr. They also lost Matt. Alimo to graduation. If you were to describe the tight end usage to somebody who's never caught a game, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but how would you describe it?
The tight end is the hidden gem that's in Coastal Carolina offense, and it's been that way since Isaiah Likely, now with the Baltimore Ravens, has been there. You have all this shiny, bright objects, and you have all these race cars and all that kind of stuff, but then you've got the tight end position, which is your workhorse, there in part of the offense, and he eats up space, and you have to put somebody on him. Sometimes they're good for 4 to 5 yards, and that's it because if it's just a small little possession route that they're running. Other times you leave them over the middle, and now they've got 25, 30, 50 yards right there as well. They're a position, very rarely are they not going to be on the field. And if they are on the field, it's because they're going 5 deep or 5 wide to run all deeps. The tight end position, I think, is one of those going to be one of the positions this year specifically, especially early on. And if you look back to the bowl game as well, or right before you get ramping up to the bowl game, that they used heavily with Ethan Vasco to help build his confidence. It might not be much. It might be, 4 receptions for 13 yards. But I promise you, look how well those receptions are made. They're made on 3rd and 1 or, 2nd and 2. Those type of key move the chain type of plays. And then every now and then they're just going to leave him open. He's going to turn the corner and you get yourself chunk yardage or big play, whatever those stat categories you want to call it. But yeah, like I said, all 3 of the tight ends right now will be seeing playing time. Some will obviously get more than others, and they all can just bring down the ball. And so I do not think that Ethan's going to be like, oh, my tight end's in, they're just an extra 6 blocker. No. It's going to be go out, get that pass, and just bring it down and then turn up field.
So moving over to the offensive line, which looks like it might be one of the strengths of the offense, they bring back 4 of 5 starters and lots of depth to go with it. They do lose left guard Will McDonald to California, but return everyone else. How did the offensive line look in the spring?
So they might have lost Will McDonald, but they gained 15 yards and unsportsmanlike penalties back. So I think he led the nation the past 2 years in unsportsmanlike penalties. So God bless him. He was a very passionate player, and he would defend his players, unfortunately, after the ball, after the whistle. And he would usually, bulldoze somebody after the whistle. No, you're right. I believe it's projected four starters returning, and then they've got two transfers coming in as well, just for straight depth. One from the school I've never heard of, UTPB, University of Texas, not Pine Bluff, but something. Heston Edwards, he's coming in, and he'll be depth. And then I believe Sawyer Gorham. He's going to be an O lineman. He'll be depth as well, coming in from Texas. So the offensive line last year was constantly a work in progress. They've gone through that hardship, and hopefully this season you see the progression of that O line maturing now together. Because, golly, last year they probably had something in the neighborhood of like 30 starts combined, 40 starts combined. Now that number should be much higher. I haven't looked yet. I haven't done the math, but that was an area of concern last year that hopefully is sliding to the area of strength, especially on pass protection, because last year it felt like it was on some of these games. In that UCLA game, if you saw that one, you got a 1 second drop and then you got to get rid of the ball because just next level athlete was already burning past inexperienced offensive linemen.
You mentioned about Sawyer, he was probably brought in for depth. So who do you think is going to take over that starting left guard position? You think it's Anthony Walton or somebody else?
I still think he's going to be on the outside.
Okay.
That's a good question of who's going to beef up the interior. And it very well, they really could just put up a new face inside. My gut feeling is that who's ever going to be the new person is going to go to the guard position, and or slide him over at center and just start one of the younger guys at center, and slide over. I do know that this is going to be a heavily combated position once they finally lock in who the ones are, because as y'all were just mentioning, is this now a strength? It darn near close to being a strength of the offense is the offensive line. I'm looking at their former depth chart now, and they've got 15 guys listed, top to bottom. And any one of them can play at least two of the three positions, or 4 of the 5 positions if you want to count left side and right side separate. It's going to be really interesting how they play it out, and just who fills in the spot opened up from oh golly, I've already forgot.
Will McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Will. Oh gosh, from heading out to California, and he's in the same position that Grayson's in. One of those you can still play, but you can't play here type of rules. So good for him for being able to add some depth to California's lineup.
All right, Charlie, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who'd you pick?
So this is going to sound clichéic, but it's going to be Ethan Vasco. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, and I mean this sincerely. Ethan came on as a third stringer and got thrusted into this stuff and was just, hey, let's just give him part of the playbook and let's just make him feel comfortable and let's just get him through the season and let's go try to win a bowl game. Well, they did exactly just that. Now he's had the off season. He's had the spring workouts. What was really cool, I want to get this cheap plug in. They had special forces come in February for 48 or 72 hours, waking everybody up at 2 a.m., putting them in the pool at 3 a.m. because the lifeguards were not willing to go into the Atlantic Ocean in February, even though the special forces unit wanted to put everybody in the ocean in February. Do some serious leadership training and just accountability and ownership and just, playing for the person next to you. and putting all these through these great, awesome leadership exercises. So now, how's that transcend to come Saturdays in September? We'll find out. But I think that helped build a lot of depth and maturity, and it also gave Coach Beck a real quick look of, more importantly, who's not on the roster. And if when you're having to have some GA or some kid on your assistant on your team go knock on your dorm room or drive down to your apartment and make sure you're at class, that's not the person they want on this roster. So put those, that hopefully those transitions have happened. But Ethan Vasco matured all during that spring, all during those leadership exercises, and now he's been working with the ones this whole time. This is finally his first season as a true number one quarterback, and I don't know if there's enough appreciation there yet for the average person. Oh, Vasco's number one. Good enough. Check. Let's talk about some diamond in the rough. Well, the diamond in the rough is actually Ethan Vasco allowing himself to showcase at a higher potential.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that.